far away from home and experiencing all new things. So what you're doing is very special, and the way you are doing it is not common. This is extraordinary.
Thank you so much.
I thought that I would start off by showing you a few images of what I've been doing just in the couple months before I came here. And I'll also sit out a little book of my work. Afterward, you can look through it. And this was made about 2 years ago, so it kind of shows what I was doing a little bit before the most recent period. So I co-own a gallery called Art Salon with a friend, and we sell artwork of the 20th century. And then I also sell my own artwork in the gallery. So about half my time is spent working in the gallery, talking to people, selling things, etc., and half the time is spent in my home studio. The last project that I did before I came was a commission for, oddly enough, an Italian restaurant. So these are some restaurateurs that I work with a few times a year, and they commissioned me to create some modernist Italian, very lightly Italian themed imagery. It's the second time I've done an Italian restaurant with them. So this was the morning that I was taking the work down to install it in the restaurant. So I was really focusing on vessels, which you'll see that theme continue in today's presentation. These are some more of the images that were part of that installation, which is this is an olive oil vessel and the olives. It's funny to come here and then to like actually see what things are like. I'm like, was I close? These are the swallows, which turns out you have something kind of like that. You have those here, which I think are so spectacular. And I've had one, I thought maybe I should ask you if it's okay, because it's been coming into my room and maybe starting to make a nest right above my bed.
Wow.
And there is a little bit of evidence of him being in there. This is some work just from literally a month ago. Sometimes I start off just with like an idea about colors, and this is the case in which I just mixed colors first, and for some reason these colors just wanted very simple shapes. This is gouache. Similarly, this was a composition that began with colors, and then I tend to sort of collage my composition together. The second one. These are all works on paper. And then I did a series of, while I was there, was to make sure that I got to the Pantheon. I had been there once before, and it just resonated so deeply with me. For the first time, this time I did reading and had more information when I went to visit it, and that always makes all the difference. And I was so taken, so struck with the perfection, the geometry, the idealism of this space. It was the biggest, it was the best, it was the most geometrically perfect, and you still feel it when you're in there. One of the things I learned on this trip is that inside of the space, if you draw a perfect sphere, it sits into the whole, this basically the shape of that. So when you're in there, you feel like you're inside of a perfect shape, in addition to seeing perfect shapes. So when I first arrived here, I had the feeling of the Pantheon in me, and these were just to sort of like get started, and I did these little printmaking pieces. Oh, good. I'll wait till I get in. Buonasera, I'm so happy you're here.
Apologies.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I'm really glad you came.
Cool. We'll go in behind the
Okay.
second.
If you guys want to sit down here in front, you can do that. At home, I do a lot of printmaking. I have a good size printing press in my studio, and there's a tiny hobby one here. If anyone is interested in doing some printmaking, it will kind of do the job. So this was done using a printmaking process with gouache, again responding to my feelings and my direct reaction to the shapes of the Pantheon. And you'll see that I don't know why this is, except that it just comes very naturally. I always think in terms of series. It's very rare that I do just like a single piece. I don't know. It's like my desire to populate the earth with my stuff. But it's very rare that I do a single piece. So this ended up being this set of little Pantheon pieces. So that was about the perfection. But then the other thing that I was really taken with, so now we just sort of see the two together before I added a little detail to one of those, is the decay, the irregularity, the way things are aging and falling apart. And it's that tension between the perfection and the imperfection, I think, of Italy, of Rome, that for me, as someone who does not come from an old place, San Francisco, by American standards, has history, but I'm really aware of it here, and really aware of how time has changed things and how beautiful that is to me. And so after the perfection, I did this little series of stones, the stones of Trastevere, and this is in gouache on a book cover. These are little vintage books, and I take the books apart and keep the covers for painting on. The cloth of the cover makes a very good little canvas. And a little pair, because I can never do one, of some more of these, and starting to tune into the Italian colors for me. Also, when I arrived here, I went on a walk and noticed that the paths around here are filled with all of we say shards, the pieces of ceramics and pottery and homes of the past. And I said, oh, yes, up the hill, La Macina di San Cresci, you know, it's the artist residency. And he said, no, I don't know this place. And his English was pretty good, and his Italian was perfect. And I thought, okay, what am I doing wrong? And then ultimately he said, San Cresci. Yes, oh, okay, that's how you say it. And I realized that the symbol that I was using for where I live, he was not understanding the symbol because I changed it a little bit. And as I walked home, I was thinking about how language are symbols. I say a word for a picture that we maybe share that picture, or maybe we don't share that picture. And so I started thinking about using the words La Macina di San Cresci or La Macchina di San Cresci as a as a jumping off point, as a tool for creating a series of abstract pieces, and just starting off very basically. So using that, I wrote over and over again the letters from the words La Macina di San Cresci, also abstracting them in the way that I had abstracted them for this man, creating something new by distorting it. This is done in just India ink and pretty dry brush. It was almost like me saying the words over and over again to him, but not being understood. The chaos the confusion of it. And then one more. Here you can see the letters a little bit more. Okay. Now, when I came here, I thought, this kind of gives you an idea of them all together. I thought, I'm not going to be like the other tourist artists who come here and do all of the same things that everybody does, the olive branches, the cypress trees, the farmhouses. But of course I did, because it's impossible. You come with completely fresh eyes, and this landscape, these colors, these shapes are so fresh and different for me. And it's like a magnetic pull. You have to go. It's like you have to explore those things. For me, I have to explore those things. And because I think in terms of shapes, when I look at a landscape, I see all of the shapes and the colors. I don't see the details so much. I see the basics. So I made a series of, almost like starting with the language, I had to start with the language of the landscape. A series of botanical, also using ink and gouache. It's like I have to work it out of my system. Now I'm satisfied. I've explored the shape of the olive branches. I've used the colors of the earth and of the olive trees. And represented the connection of all the shapes as I go on the walks. And also I was thinking about the old colors, the colors of the old buildings, the colors of the earth, the colors of the frescoes, and the decay as well, and the beauty that is in the irregularity of all of that. So, then I thought, okay, I've done the olive trees, I have to get serious. I have to do something important with my time, and I have to come back with something more than just the typical things. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use the color. Well, I started mixing colors, and my colors became like the colors of frescoes. And I realized, okay, I need to work with the fresco colors, these pale, washed out colors. I used all of the white that I had. And I made a series of landscapes.
Sorry, I can only search by topic for movies.
She's listening, but not
She's
getting it.
listening.
Yeah.
And of course I had to make the cypress tree. This is the path. It was the first tree that I noticed. There's a tree just a little bit down the path, and it stands alone. And I love the repeating of patterns, the repeating of objects. So the cypress trees here, of course the amazing clouds. This is, there is a path on this side of Montefiorale, below the town just a little bit, where there is the repeating cypress trees. And of course these are not the colors of the cypress trees, but I do think about the formal elements and what is going to excite the eye so that each part, each shape is recognized and appreciated. And I do actually end up loving the fresco colors, these in-between colors, not quite green, not quite blue, not quite yellow. They have changed and become a little bit dirty. And then the last piece is more of a view of how incredible the agriculture is. Who was it? Oh, Kate, it was you that said that all of this feels like one big garden. And that was such a perfect way to say it. Because the earth has been farmed and taken care of for so many years, there is a feeling of the human touch on the land everywhere, but it's done in a loving, beautiful way. And so we end up with these beautiful patterns and beautiful clouds. Okay, so I told you before, well, first of all, there's some quick in the environment. I told you before that I love vessels and I love history. So the only day trip that I made was to Volterra, to the Etruscan Museum. And I am just, every time I go to a museum like this, I am so amazed by how everything has been done. Every shape has been explored already thousands, it feels like thousands of years ago, they already did it all. And so I photographed these, but then the museum was empty toward the end of the day, and I began making drawings at the museum, drawing and overlapping many times the same or combining shapes as a way of using the vessels as a language for abstraction, because I love all the parts of the shapes. So that resulted in a series of Etruscan vessels. I'm going to lay these all out. Let's see, I'll put one up there. This gives you a good idea of how I was drawing in the museum, and then would finish. So many beautiful shapes, so inspiring. And when you walk around that museum, sometimes there are rows all the way to the ceiling of the vessels. And I thought, I want to create as many as I can, like the museum. So I made maybe 12 of these. Sometimes I stopped in the middle of making it because for me it was just perfect at that moment. I didn't need to finish all the creating of the vessel. And then I tried a different approach, which was to draw the shapes, cut them out, and reassemble them into a new shape. Because when I looked at them, I saw how beautiful it was to see the broken ones and how they were put back together. And you see the old ceramic and the new ceramic combined, and you see the pieces, and to me that's a beautiful series of shapes. Sometimes when I'm doing these, I realize, like, you know, as artists, we are, it's just paper and paint. Like, there's no, the magic is only having the idea and doing it. Sometimes what we do is very simple, like a child, like to cut the shapes, to paint in it. Really anybody can do it, but it's the doing of it that is important. And yes, there are artists who can make something that is like photorealistic, but still, when you come close and look at it, it's only paint on canvas. And I used to be very almost like embarrassed, ashamed of the simplicity. But we can only do what we love and what we feel is the way that we see. So I embrace the simplicity of this, and that brings me to the last thing. So last night I had a little bit of paint left from the frescoes from these pieces, and before I poured them out, I set up a table outside at the magic hour, the last hour, 2 hours of night, of day before night, and I went with no idea, just okay, I'll paint whatever I want, whatever, it doesn't have to look like what I'm seeing. And so I did this little series of landscapes. Again, very simple, no plan, just reacting to how it looked, how it felt to look out over this landscape from the yard. Sometimes when we make pieces like this, it can do a very good job of communicating to the viewer, to the people at home, what being here felt like. We can paint something very realistic, like one of these, where we can really see the elements, or sometimes we can just paint the shapes and colors, and so that's what I did here. So, what am I doing with my last 2 days? Priya and I have been talking about how she's here for a month, which I really think is the right time, like three weeks to a month, because the first couple of days, there's so much information coming in that you feel it's chaotic, like it's hard to make things. It's hard to take something out when you have so much coming in. But I've started to think a little bit more conceptually, and I'm going to make some paintings in the church. My personal story is that I grew up in the house of a pastor, a priest, a Protestant pastor. So my life was all about church, and church on Sunday morning, church on Sunday night, church on Wednesday night, and a lot of religion in my house. And I do love churches. I think churches are very beautiful. I love the history. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go on a Sunday, but I'm going to do what I want to do in a church. And so today I was using new technology. I was drawing with my iPad, making some drawings, using the shapes inside of the church as the inspiration. And now tomorrow I'm going to take those sketches that I did on the iPad and make some large paintings about this size as kind of the final thing. So kind of mixing the new technology with the old place and my personal history with the church, but now for more of the meaning in my life, which art holds a greater meaning than any of the religious stories to me. Yeah, and that's it. Are there any thoughts, reactions, questions, artists you think I should know about?
I was very interested in your way you did your presentation, because you did it through your own eye, which, rather than talking about the works, you talk more about how you saw things, what you're looking for. Which, I'm not an artist, or not a visual artist anyway, so that's very interesting to me.
Thank you.